In the next 20 minutes, we be summarizing the whole episodes of Blue Eye Samurai Season 1, so sit back and enjoy.
The episode begins with an on-screen introductory text. In 1633, Japan had closed its borders to the entire world. Anyone other than the pure Japanese was branded as a monster. Despite this, a legendary swordsman was born. The scene opens with a samurai walking into a noodle shop with glasses, a sword, and a hat with a serious demeanor. The samurai is a woman in disguise. The samurai ordered food with Ringo, who had an amputated arm but considered this shop to make the best of soba noodles. There's also a flesh trader, Hachiman, in the noodle shop. He had bought women for sex trafficking. He was rude and obnoxious. Ringo makes a mistake and Hachiman pulls out a pistol. This interests the samurai as it isn't entirely Japanese made. When Hachiman tries to get over smart with him, he cuts his fingers off. Hachiman reveals that Heiji Shindo had sold the gun to him but calls him names when he sees the samurai's blue eyes. Ringo is impressed with the samurai and decides to follow her. Ringo asks her to let him learn under her, but she refuses and ties him to a tree. On her journey, she stops by a temple, thanks the gods for helping her, and prays for her sword father's well-being. We now see a flashback to the time she was a child and was bullied by a few boys. They fight, and the bully is about to attack her with a huge stone, but is interrupted by a blue comet falling in front of them. The bullies run away. The samurai sees an old blind man inspect the comet and take it with him. The girl helps the man and goes to his house. She was asked to leave after being fed. She pretends to leave but comes back and spends the night there. The girl wakes up the following day to realize the blind man knows she hasn't gone and instead asks her to run some errands. At present, the samurai is in Kyoto looking for a Shindo dojo. She meets some members from the dojo who lead her to a brothel. The samurai sees that Ringo has followed her there and tells the woman there to keep him with them for 3 nights, and she pays for it. The women also tell her how to reach the Shindo dojo. On the way to the dojo, she sees Princess Akemi in her palanquin. Princess Akemi is asked to marry someone she does not like for the kingdom's benefit. However, she visits her father to persuade him to marry someone of her choice. She and her advisor devise a plan and convince him to allow her to marry Teijin, a reputed and talented samurai. She meets him in secret to give the good news. The samurai reaches the dojo and he is not allowed to meet the master. We see a flashback to when a young samurai learned from her sword father to wield a sword. The samurai had learned how to make a kitchen knife and a sword. One day, she is caught practicing with a sword and tells her sword father she wants to be the best swordsman. She tells him that she is a mixed-race child. Sword father lets her practice at night. In the present, the students of the Shindo dojo are trying to kick the samurai out forcefully, but she fights and defeats everyone single-handedly. Teijin is called, and the samurai recognizes him as the bully from her childhood. They duel and her glasses fall off and Teijin recognizes her. She defeats Teijin, but the master of the dojo arrives. The samurai asks the master where she could find his brother. He led the samurai to Tanabe Island under the Genko clan's protection. Master of Shindo dojo apologizes to his brother and sends the 4 fangs to eliminate the samurai. The samurai treats her wounds under a waterfall and rests. We see a flashback to when she left the sword father, telling him she was ready to take on her enemies. In the present, the 4 fangs are on their way when she hears a rustle in the bushes. She is prepared to fight, and out comes Ringo, and he realizes the samurai is a woman.
Episode 2 begins with Ringo's father cleaning up the blood from his restaurant floor. The 4 fangs arrive, mercenaries in masks. They ask the man about the samurai and he tells them everything that happened. Meanwhile, Ringo keeps following the samurai and tries to convince her to let him tag along. She refuses. He insists that he can be useful. At a travel junction, the samurai nearly gets into trouble when she realizes she can't bribe her way through the guards. Ringo comes to her rescue as he has a travel pass for 2 people, courtesy of his father's noodle shop. Afterwards, Ringo makes his case to be an apprentice again, and this time she relinquishes. Akemi counsels Teijin, who is nursing his wounds after his battle with the samurai. When she says the fight was a dishonorable attack and not a proper duel, Teijin decides to go after the samurai and challenge him properly. Ringo and the samurai are on their way to find a boat to get to the island where Heiji Shindo is. The samurai reveals she doesn't want to kill Heiji Shindo but the white man he protects. They reach a seaside town but find that a festival called the Hadaka Matsuri is going on. She'll have to wait for the next day to sail. While they wait, the samurai ties a bell around Ringo's foot since he keeps sneaking up on her. Meanwhile, Teijin follows their trail, but he's not the only one. The 4 fangs are not far behind and they leave a fair amount of blood behind them. Heiji Shindo is waiting for a signal from the 4 fangs, which means they've killed the samurai. He talks with a white man with red hair and their conversation reveals that the white man isn't allowed to leave this island except during 1 month in the spring. However, he has plans to meet the shogun and change that. With time to spare, the samurai trains in the woods and then bathes in the sea. A flashback shows a man approaching the sword father. He's a bookbinder but wants a sword to avenge his father's death at the hands of a drunk ronin. The sword father agrees to make a sword for him. We see that he calls the young samurai Mizu. When Mizu tries practicing swordplay with the customer, he beats her and makes fun of her for being a soft half-breed. That's when she begins binding her chest. She helps the sword father make the sword, but it ends up breaking off at one point. The sword father presents it to the customer, but he grows angry. He's about to hit Mizu, but the sword father stops him. From the feel of his hand, the sword father realizes that he is not a bookbinder but an assassin. The man simply boasts about his many kills, calling himself blood-soaked Shiaki. He takes the sword and goes on his own way. At present, Tegan watches Mizu practicing in the woods. He sees her cut through a giant tree and gets frustrated when he can't do the same. Akemi is called to see her father, who presents her to a couple of men. They represent the shogun's younger son, who is looking for a new bride. She is told she must blacken her teeth, as the son prefers it that way. After they leave, Akemi begs her father to reconsider, but he won't be moved. They leave for the wedding in 5 days. Sometime later, the steadfast Akemi is about to run away while pretending to go shopping for silks. Siki, of course, realizes and tries dissuading her. When she doesn't change her mind, he decides to run away with her. Ringo is enjoying the town's festivities when he learns of a ritual where a priestess throws a magical stick into the sea, and the person who catches it gains magical powers. He then tries the town's best noodle shop and is so mesmerized by their noodles that the owner offers him a job. As the drums start beating to signal the start of the ritual, the four fangs catch up to Mizu. In the town, everybody takes off their clothes and jumps into the water. The mercenaries corner Mizu at the edge of a cliff. She takes a step back and leaps off. When they move forward to check, they find her standing on a small outcrop on the cliffside. The fangs all jump down as well. One by one, Mizu cuts down the fangs despite the sheerness of the mountainside. The third one has her fall all the way down to the shore. The final member of the fangs turns out to be none other than blood-soaked Shiaki. They fight and Mizu gets injured when she's distracted by Teijin, hiding in the rocks. Just as Shiaki is about to strike her down from behind, she throws her sword, which goes straight through him. The priestess throws the stick into the water and chaos ensues. Ringo catches the stick in his mouth. But all is not over for Mizu as Teijin comes out of the shadows insistent on getting his honor back. They move towards each other but Mizu collapses. Teijin stands with his sword raised over her, which brings the end of Blue Eye Samurai Episode 2.
The episode begins with a flashback to the time Mizu was born. We hear two men contemplating killing the child. Between arguments, one man killed the other and asked a lady to take the child away. In the present, Teijin hesitates to kill Mizu but is interrupted by Ringo, who takes his master's safety. Teijin tells Ringo where they can be safe. Mizu is in pain and in a sleep-induced state. She remembers her childhood when she was locked away in a hut and asked never to leave if she wanted to live. Meanwhile, Heiji Shindo was asked by the angry white man to kill the samurai. Ringo treats Mizu and Teijin stays with them. Teijin and Mizu agree on a duel date and Teijin defeats Mizu and dies in his hands. A strong, big man arrives and gives a message that Heiji Shindo has asked Mizu to join him for a cup of tea. Teijin tells her it was a trap, but Mizu begins the journey to meet Heiji Shindo. Ringo and Teijin join. Akemi is adamant about finding Teijin, but her advisor Siki tries to warn her of her difficulties. As expected, they were stopped and looted by brigands. They then get a ride on a cart. On their way, Mizu and Teijin talk about where they grew up. Teijin provokes Mizu. They fight but stop after a while and continue on the journey. Ringo shares with Teijin that he wanted to achieve greatness. Ringo is left with a strong man while Teijin and Mizu cautiously reach the location. They were not met with an ambush, but Heiji Shindo was waiting for them. Akemi wakes up from her sleep, realizes they are further away from their destination, and wants to return home. Siki talks about the only two paths women have, and this annoys her. She walks into a tavern where sex workers are bought and sold. She pretends to be a sex worker and gets a ride to her destination with the man there. At the tea party, Heiji Shindo reveals where to find the white man. He proposes an offer, which Mizu declines. Heiji Shindo reveals the other options. Mizu cuts his hand off and archers around the mountain start to attack. Mizu and Teijin try and escape. One arrow hits Teijin's leg. Ringo has poisoned the strong man and comes to rescue Teijin and Mizu. They reach safety and Mizu knocks Teijin down. Mizu and Ringo leave to find the white man Fowler. Teijin wakes up to a letter promising to have a duel in autumn once he has got his revenge. He is annoyed, but someone drags him away. Heiji Shindo tells Fowler that the samurai is a monster and will find him. Teijin is brought inside in front of the men in a sake barrel to reveal more information about Mizu. The episode begins with Mizu finding the right brothel to get more information on Fowler. She reaches Madame Kaji's brothel and she educates Mizu about how sex is an art by showing different rooms and how each person has a peculiar sexual desire. Once this is done, Mizu gets straight to the point and asks how to reach Fowler's castle. They make a deal. Madame Kaji tells Mizu about a girl taken from her by the ruthless boss Hamada, who forced everyone in the area to pay him half of what they made. She asks Mizu to kill the girl Kinuyo for her good. She tells Mizu that Kinuyo is deaf and mute and her father had sold the girl to her after abusing her. Moreover, she requests Mizu to make it look like an accident. In Fowler's castle, Teijin is tortured as he does not reveal any information about Mizu. Fowler leaves the room, calling the torture boring. Heiji Shindo asks Teijin why he was protecting Mizu despite Mizu ruining his engagement and honor. Teijin says Mizu deserved better than him. Meanwhile, Mizu is resting and Akemi enters the room, wanting to serve Mizu. We see a flashback to when Akemi tried to find Teijin but got a lead to Mizu. Mizu's father is giving instructions to whom he thought was Mizu about the proper sexual position for marriage and realizes she is gone. He sends his men to search for her. Mizu sees these men while looking at Teijin and escapes their sight. She follows Mizu and Ringo around town and reaches the brothel for revenge. She disguises herself to be a sex worker and gets herself into Mizu's room. In the present, Akemi had drugged the sake she was serving Mizu. Akemi tried to flatter Mizu when she told her story about how she had killed a lowly swordsman. Akemi loses her patience and attacks Mizu, but Mizu is quick to deflect the attack. She then tells Akemi that she had not killed Teijin but had set a date for a duel. She ties Akemi up and asks Ringo to keep an eye on her and kill her if necessary. Mizu stealthily sneaks into Kinuyo's room where she is getting treated for the bruises caused by Hamada. She does the sign language as instructed and Kinuyo trusts Mizu. Mizu kills her and makes it look like the bodyguard has killed Kinuyo. Mizu gets out of the house and a boy sees her. She asks the boy to fetch a night security guard because of a fight between two people. Mizu goes back and informs Madame Kaji that the work was done. Madame Kaji gives Mizu directions on how to enter Fowler's castle. They hear a commotion outside after a while. Everyone goes out to see Hamada, who has brought a large group of men to burn the brothel down. Episode 5, The Tale of the Ronin and the Bride. The episode begins with a puppet show, with the story of Ronin and the bride. In the present, Mizu prepares Hamada's men to enter the brothel house to attack. She sends the others to the basement and asks Ringo to guard the basement. Mizu starts killing Hamada's men from the shadows. We see a flashback to Mizu's past, where her mother gets Mizu married to an outcast. He was a samurai called Mikio, but was thrown away by his lord. It was difficult for them both initially. However, they started to get to know each other and get close. Mikio liked a horse called Kai since he was tough. He wants to give it to his previous lord to win him over, but as they bond, he gives it to Mizu. They get close enough to share a bed. Mizu reveals about her birth and how she was treated growing up. Mikio tells her he wants to see everything about her and they duel. Mizu destroys Mikio in the battle, hurting his ego. He calls her a monster, and this hurts Mizu. She decides to soften her husband's heart by dressing up. Her mother then tells her that Mikio had gone to his previous lord to sell all his horses, including Kai. She hears horses and steps out to find some men who had come to kill her. At that moment, Mikio appears but walks away, leaving her to deal with the men. In the present, Mizu is wounded but tries to fight. Some men get to the basement, and Akemi and Ringo fight together to kill these men. Akemi finds Mizu on the floor and tries to wake her up. Eventually, she does when Akemi is in danger. Mizu then holds the door as a shield, but the men break it down, and she's under it, trying to get out. Mizu manages to get up and slay the entire army of men. We cut to the past when she did the same to those men who had come to kill her. In the present, Hamada is left to be killed by the women of the brothel. In the past, Mikio came back apologizing for leaving her, but her mother and Mikio got into a fight and Mikio kills her mother. Subsequently, Mizu ends up killing Mikio. Presently, Akemi's father's men find her and ask her to leave with them. She begs Mizu not to allow them to do it, but asks the men to take her away. Ringo confronts Mizu about her behavior, and because Mizu does not care about honor and only revenge, he leaves Mizu to go the rest of the way alone. The episode ends with the puppet show ending in Chauvin's presence. Akemi points out that she had met real Onryo vengeful spirit once, and they had nothing other than darkness in their eyes and hearts. She opens her mouth, showing dark teeth, indicating she is married to Chauvin's youngest son. Episode 6, All Evil Dreams and Angry Words. The episode begins with Mizu in front of Fowler's castle. He prays to have the strength to get her revenge while being reminded of all the ugly names she was called in the past and is hit with a pang of guilt after reminding herself of Ringo's words. As instructed, she enters the castle basement, knowing she has to reach the 9th floor. Then Mizu is met with her first hurdle. As she tries to pick a lock of a door in the basement, it is filled with water. She still manages to open the door and gasp for some air. Mizu enters the castle and sees guards all around. She manages to kill a couple of guards and reach the next level. One of the guards sees blood and starts to ring a bell. Mizu manages to kill that guard as well. Fowler is relaxed and entertaining his guests. He talks about the power of a gun over a sword and how white people were experts in killing. Heiji Shindo is worried and looks through a camera and sees Mizu. He watches Mizu cross the next barrier. The walls start closing in and Mizu runs towards the door, but swords start popping out without a set pattern. Just before she reaches the door, her foot is hit with a sword. She manages to cut it and pass through. The next barrier was the ground itself. It would open up, and below were swords. During the last jump, her sword gets stuck to the wall, and an army of men is waiting for her. She manages to kill them all without a weapon of her own. One man is spared and is asked to fetch her sword. Mizu enters a kitchen-like area and pauses as she dips her leg in frozen water. She notices the camera watching her a couple of times. The next trap is filled with zombie-like creatures. A giant shuts the lights off, but Mizu kills them all. She enters a cell and finds Teijin beat up. She helps him up and takes him along with her. The next challenge is to fight a giant. Teijin offers to help, but Mizu takes the giant on her own. She picks Teijin up and reaches the floor Fowler was on. Heiji Shindo starts to panic, but the other guests are relaxed, saying nobody would dare attack them. Just as they say that one of the guests was killed, Mizu enters the room with Teijin. Fowler shoots and Mizu's sword is cut and hits her shoulder. Mizu is beaten up, but when Teijin tries to help, he is beaten up as well. Fowler points the gun to Teijin and Mizu pulls Fowler out the castle window into the frozen water below. Mizu tries to get back on top, but is in vain. We see a black figure trying to help. Episode 7. Nothing Broken. The episode begins with Ringo in front of Master Iji's house with unconscious Mizu and Teijin. Mizu and Teijin are healing and Fowler and Heiji decide to leave the castle and go to Edo. Fowler wanted to destroy the shogunate clan and planned to smuggle guns through fishing boats. Heiji uses this information against Fowler by working with one of the shogun to get the rifles before they reach Fowler. Akemi is in her father's house and is presented with gifts from many lords because of her marriage. A bird is given. Akemi sets it free and Shogun's son shoots it. Akemi is angered and yells at him, but his mother watches this. Akemi is out with other concubines and sees Kaji. She stops to talk to her, and Kaji advises her to proceed with the marriage. Mizu is awake and her master tries to remind her of the lessons he taught her as a child. Teijin and Mizu spar and Teijin gets aroused and apologizes, saying he was missing Akemi. Mizu then reveals when it happened and Teijin is disappointed in Mizu for not being an honorable samurai. Mizu is hurt, becomes a better person, and performs the Heart Sutra with Ringo's help. Akemi at dinner is fed the bird the shogun's son had killed and at night is presented with 2 new birds. Akemi gets angry and slaps Shogun's son. He then tells her that he is apologizing for his mother's actions to get close, and they have sex. Meanwhile, Heiji's inside man gives terrible news that they found no weapons. Fowler had got the guns using a piano and other items. The men who had betrayed him were killed, and he let Heiji control the army under his command. Akemi fires her help and decides to hire Madame Kaji's girls. One of the girls' eyes reveals Fowler's plan to Akemi. Akemi takes her to her father, and she also reveals it to him. Her father pushes eyes down the castle and locks Akemi up, saying she's part of the clan and will be safe there until all this is over. The last episode begins with young Mizu apologizing to her mother and promising to get her revenge even if she has to put her life on the line. At present, Mizu and Ringo are in Edo. Mizu instructs Ringo to fight the armed men and wait for her and Akemi. He was to take Akemi out into the city through the north sewers. She also mentions that if Mizu does not return, she has failed or died, and he has to leave immediately. Ringo asks her to come back alive. Fowler meets the Shogun's sons and gives them a lot of money. He requests to meet Shogun, but is refused the meeting. Fowler says he will meet Shogun the next year and leaves. Mizu enters the castle and meets Haji and tells her about Fowler's plans and asks her to take her girls and leave. Sticky comes to the cell where Akemi is hiding and rescues her. They put her father behind the partition and try to escape. Guards surround them, and Mizu comes in time to save Akemi and Seki. She asks Akemi to go to the north sewers and leave the city immediately. She also mentions that Teijin was looking for her and loved her dearly. Ringo is waiting by the sewers and kills one guard. He was about to attack the other, but the attack is deflected and it turns out to be Teijin. Teijin informs of his plans and takes Ringo with him to the Shogun. They manage to get the place and warn Shogun about Fowler's plan. Once his words are confirmed, Shogun calls him loyal and gives him a sword to protect him and his family, and Ringo joins. Fowler gets to the castle with his gun-armed men and slays all. He enters the second gate and kills the archers as well. While one of the guards is preparing to stop Fowler, Heiji kills him, making it easier for Fowler. Fowler kills the entire army and enters the place where Shogun is hiding. Shogun shows bravery, but is shot in the head. Lord Mori stabs himself. Teijin asks Shogun's sons to take the family through an underground route and leave while they stop Fowler. Fowler makes a move, but Mizu attacks him and his men. She kills all of Fowler's men and is fighting him. Teijin is severely hurt and asks Ringo to run away immediately. Fowler leaves and Mizu follows, asking Teijin to find Akemi and go, as it was not his fight. Teijin sees Heiji and stabs him with his sword. Mizu and Fowler battle and Mizu chokes. Mizu regains her power and attacks Fowler. He is ready to leave and Mizu sets the place on fire. Fowler calls her a wild one and walks through the fire. Akemi and Siki try to escape, but she stops and asks Siki's help to block the armed men so they are trapped. They are successful, and as they are running away, Seki is shot from inside. Akemi is mourning Siki, and Tegan comes to her aid.